I'm starting this up as a venture to promote atheism, to promote this critical thinking. I'm not necessarily promoting atheism. I'm promoting critical thinking. That's my whole basis for this channel. I am personally an atheist because I don't see any evidence that can't be questioned or that can't be easily explained otherwise. Any evidence for a creator. The only argument that has any kind of weight, and I think most faith-based people know this, is that we don't know, so it's possible. And just because something's possible doesn't make it true. I would invite you to also check out other atheist channels like The Amazing Atheist and Cult of Dusty. They're both amazing speakers and probably do much more entertaining videos than I do, at least so far. And they have provided a big inspiration for me as far as being an atheist and being proactive and promoting critical thinking, and also not being thought to be an outcast, because there are other people like me who look at religion and say, wait a minute, you're jumping to conclusions. Now on top of that, there's also the, hold on a second, they're taking your money, and hold on a second, they're raping your children, and hold on a second, the Spanish Inquisition, and all that other immoral type of overtones to religion. But my goal today, and for the rest of my life, is going to be in a positive sense, to promote critical thinking, to promote the scientific method, to promote not rushing to judgment, rushing to conclusions, so that you can come up with your own purpose, with your own life, and make your life and live your life the happiest that it can be. Now, I've been responding to articles for a long time now on Yahoo articles and other news forums, and what I find is that there's a lot of people who think that the absence of evidence is the evidence of absence. And I think that that's a big mistake. You see, it all goes back to the scientific method, where you come up with a problem, you find a testable hypothesis, and then you test it rigorously, unambiguously. You come up with certain parameters in which you can't introduce any kind of bias. You challenge yourself so that you can use critical thinking to come up with your own conclusions. And how, when you're challenged with something like a person who has a particular faith that's unfounded or has missing components, that you are able to use your brain to logically think about what they're saying, how to challenge it back at them, and then prepare yourself for whatever response you're going to get. One of the most popular ones that I've heard is, well, you just got to have faith. Well, faith, by definition, is the belief in something without evidence. And maybe that's the way some people work. It's not the way I work. And I insist that if you're going to be working under that sort of a parameter where, well, it's just my faith or whatever, then I'm not going to take you seriously. The universe is structured in such a way that it's testable, and we can use our five senses. We can use experiments and technology to test the universe, the material that it's made from. One of the things that lends credibility to the scientific method is that it works. The fact that I am speaking to you on this webcam proves that the scientific method works, because the computer that I'm using, the webcam that I'm using, and the computer that you're using to watch me are all products of technology, which are, of course, nurseryed in science. The first step to the scientific method is defining a question or recognizing a problem. Most often, people with very inquisitive minds come up with the best questions. I find that children often pose the best questions because they're unimpeded when they ask questions, they haven't been trained yet not to ask questions. For most adults, first time they ask a question, sometimes it gets downplayed. Carl Sagan came up with a great example of this when he said, well, there was a child who probably asked his teacher, why is the moon round? And of course he got some sort of degrading response like, well, what other shape did you expect it to be? Rather than, well, let's try and work this out. Defining a question is the most important because it obviously recognizes a problem in the world. It takes into account the things that are perplexing you. You know, why is the sun hot? Why is the ground hard? Why can't I put my finger through something solid? Why are liquids liquid? They seem like simple questions, but often, especially when we really exercise the scientific method, we find that they have very beautiful explanations as to why they're like that. The deeper we delve, the more we recognize that we don't know, the more beautiful the questions that we're able to pose. The second part of the scientific method is observation. Now, this is the part that I think differentiates between faith and science so much. This is the part that most people don't understand, is that science does not come up with a hypothesis before it gathers evidence. You see, science looks at something and says, well, it's acting a certain way, or it's behaving this way, and I can't explain it, but I think this is what's happening. Whereas with faith, what they end up doing is telling you that this is the way it is, and look, here's the reason why it's like that. Now, this isn't going to be an anti-faith video. This is more of an educational standpoint as to how I use your critical thinking skills. I encourage you to, the next time that you hear something, the next time that somebody poses some sort of a gossip or a rumor or something like that, that you use your inquisitive mind and you observe. And then you can gather your evidence and your information. And from there, you can then come up with an explanatory hypothesis. And that's the next part of the scientific method. When forming a hypothesis, there are certain characteristics of a hypothesis that you want to be present when you come up with this explanation that you think might be happening. Now, it could be very wrong what you're thinking about a hypothesis. That's not the point. The point is that you're able to determine if it's right or wrong. And the way that you are able to do this is when you form a good hypothesis, the hypothesis should be testable. Meaning that under controlled conditions, you should be able to take that hypothesis, apply it to what you're observing, and see if there are certain characteristics that you can make predictions on. So, for instance, let's just say you're burning a candle, and the candle goes out when you put a cup over it. Okay, you can say, well, perhaps that flame, when the glass fills up with smoke, the presence of that is what puts the flame out. Now, of course, we all know this isn't true, but let's just pose that as a hypothesis. Well, how can we test that? Well, we could test it by maybe using something that doesn't produce a thick smoke, or by removing oxygen from the glass and seeing if it'll burn, seeing if it'll burn in a vacuum, seeing if it will burn in other conditions like underwater. I mean, obviously there's no smoke underwater, so why won't it burn? And so that is a perfectly fine hypothesis for why does a flame go out. However, obviously we know the difference now because we've tested it. The next part is testing the hypothesis. Now, this is done through experimentation. You want to make sure that there's no outside influence, that you're not taking into account any bias, that, because there's lots of things that can be tested. For instance, when testing psychic ability, they'll do a double-blind test where when two people are, say, trying to communicate, neither of them will know what they're going to try to communicate. So you can control those factors and then test it viably. This is really, really important. The second thing that's most important about testing these results is that they're repeatable. Now, the reason for this is because when you come up with something in science, it doesn't matter who you are. You could be Einstein, Stephen Hawking, Carl Sagan, Richard Dawkins, any of these other people that faith-based people think are devils. And you can go ahead and conduct those same exact experiments and come up with the exact same results. That's the beauty of science. If you think that there's something that they missed, an experiment that would prove them wrong for their hypothesis, something that they didn't think of, you can use that to disprove their hypothesis as well. In fact, that's what scientists relish. And because the results are reproducible, that is what makes it credible. Because if I observe something and you observe the exact same thing, then obviously there's something going on here. And the more scientists that test it and get the same results, the more accepted that particular theory is. When you hear things like the theory of gravity or the theory of evolution, it's because those have been tested and those results have been reproduced. Now, one of the things that's beautiful about the scientific method is that one piece of evidence, one thing that was predicted by a certain hypothesis is incongruent with the hypothesis has to be thrown out. It has to be taken away, changed. There's nothing sacred. This is something that I think a lot of people don't understand when confronting the scientific method, especially from a faith-based position. Because under a faith-based position, you are told to accept something a certain way. And if you don't, then you are immoral. This is a huge flaw. This is a problem in our society. If you are taught that, say, Democrats are evil or Republicans are evil, you are unable to test that. And if you do test that, you are considered immoral. Then what ends up happening is there's this dogmatic problem that happens where it becomes more of a decree than something that was ever thought of with critical thinking. Hey everybody, James here. I just wanted to thank you for watching my video. I know it's a long and boring one. And I also want to apologize a little bit for the choppiness. It's my first time ever making a video to put on a YouTube that actually has a message. I think I put on something from Trials Evolution at one point, and it was just a funny video. But I just want to thank you all for taking the time and looking at the video. I encourage you to look up other atheist channels and other reason channels where they encourage you to use your own brain, because your brain is the best resource you have for testing the universe. I hope that you can all look forward to other videos by me. They should be a little bit more exciting. I'm recording this at a later date because I finally got around to editing the video together, and I realized how choppy it is. There's a whole lot of work in there. There's a whole lot of good stuff that was said, and I just want to make sure that you all don't look so much at the quality for now, because that will get better as I get more practice with the video editing software and my webcam and how I look on camera and how to be comfortable in front of the lens and all that. But I just wanted to thank you again. And this is my third time thanking you for watching the video. Take care. Think critically.